Hi, I'm Nikki from Find Me Crafting. For most of their lives, my kids have been sleeping on lofts. That is sort of like a bunk bed, but it just holds one bed, puts it up high, giving you all the space underneath for whatever you want. My kids and I both love them. It gives you lots of room underneath to put a desk, to put dressers, to put whatever else you want, and it gives that fun top bunk feel. There is one downside though. There is no storage at the top of the loft for anything else. So I decided we were going to fix that problem. I came up with the bedside pocket caddy. This thing will hang with these straps from a loft with a railing or a bunk bed or any bed with a frame you can wrap the straps around. You can customize how big these pockets are depending on what you want your kid to be able to store. They're great for water bottles, books, bookmarks, glasses, and if you're brave, you could let them keep a book light in here. And don't forget, retainers. This is a great organizer space solution for kids, teenagers, college students, pretty much anybody who needs space on that top bed. And they're really easy to make. Come on, I'll show you how. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any new patterns or projects. Here's what you're going to need for supplies. You need some cotton fabric for the pockets themselves, for the actual body of the bedside caddy. This fabric needs to be cut to 36 inches long by 18 inches wide. You're going to need some fusible fleece to iron onto the back of that pocket fabric. This is going to be cut to 35 inches by 17 inches. You're also going to need some fabric for the straps. Now, I made two different variations because the lofts that I was sizing them to were different sizes. So the first one is this fabric, and I cut these so that the straps are wider, but they are shorter because it only has to wrap around this smaller metal pole. So this fabric I cut to 8 inches by 5 inches, and I did that for 5 different straps. These straps needed to be longer, and so I made them a little bit more narrow because these are going to go around something the size of a 2x4 because it is going around a handmade loft. So these straps are cut to 12 inches long by 4¼ inches wide. You're going to need some fusible interfacing to go with the straps, and I'm using Pellon SF101. If you're using the wider strap measurement, this needs to be cut at 7½ inches long by 4½ inches wide. If you're using the narrower straps that are longer, these would be cut to 11½ inches long by 3¾ inches wide. And once again, no matter which size you're doing, you need to cut out enough for 5 straps. You're also going to need the supplies for the snaps. That includes all of the caps and the male pieces and the female pieces. These are size 20 plastic snaps. I'm going to be using a cam snap table press. You can also use a handheld press to install them. You're also going to need an awl to punch the holes for the snaps. Most of these snap sets will come with one of these, but if it doesn't, you definitely want to get one of these. You're going to need a way to cut your fabric, so you're going to want a cutting mat and a sewing ruler and a rotary blade or some fabric scissors. You're going to want a fabric marking pen, pencil, or marker. I'm going to be using this one. You need a sewing machine and some matching all-purpose thread. You need an iron and an ironing board. I'm going to be using sewing clips, and you can also use pins. And I have a couple of small tools that are helpful for this project, but definitely not necessary. One is just a little small sewing ruler, and this is a turning tool. It helps turn out all your corners. We're going to begin by interfacing our fabric. So the fusible fleece should be placed adhesive side against the back side of your pocket fabric, and it should be placed in the center, which will leave you about ½ inch on all of the sides that should not have interfacing. So you're going to want to center it up and then hold both pieces, flip it over, and iron from the fabric side. This places your iron closer to your adhesive, so it's going to melt the adhesive onto the fabric. And also you're not going to burn your fleece this way. So just iron on top until your fleece is secured. You need to iron the interfacing onto each of your strap pieces as well. These should also be centered, and there will be 1/4 of an inch all the way around that does not have any interfacing. And this one you can just iron right on top of. Next, we're going to get the straps ready. So you're going to take your strap fabric that has the interfacing on the back side. We're going to fold the right sides of the fabric together along this long side. And you can clip that in place. And now we're going to sew just one of the short sides and the long open side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Leave the other short side open. Next, you want to cut off the excess fabric in the 2 corners. Do not cut your stitch line that you just made. Just cut off the excess. And now through our opening at the bottom, we want to flip this right side out. So I find it best to roll as much as you can inside with your fingers. And if you push most all of the fabric inside, so I have this little bit that is right side out, I'm going to push the rest of it in. And now you have to just release kind of this knotted area at the other end a little bit, open it up. And then if you have a turning tool or something like this, or a chopstick or something, if you push it in, you can kind of go front to back and push the excess fabric out. And then once you get to the very end of it, this turning tool has a pointy end, and that is useful for getting the very corners of your fabric pushed out. And now you're left with this wrinkly hot mess. So you want to take this back to the ironing board and press it, iron it flat. Make sure that your one seam here on the side does not roll to one side or the other. You want it right on the side so that both sides of your strap look pretty. Once you have it looking relatively flat again, I am going to now sew with a 1/8 inch seam, just top stitch around this side, across the one short side, and back down the other long side. You still do not need to sew this shut. You never need to sew this shut, so you don't even need to worry about that open end. Then you just need to repeat that process 4 more times so you have a total of 5 straps ready to go. Next, we need to position our straps onto the pocket fabric. This is the large piece of fabric that has the fusible fleece on the back, and we want to situate all of our straps so that they're evenly spaced across this top edge. I'm going to start by finding the center of this fabric just by folding it over. And I'm just going to crease it a little bit with my finger. That is the center. So I'm going to start by putting my first strap centered right there where my center is. You want your raw unsewn edge of the strap to be up here by this edge of your pocket fabric. So I'm going to center it up. I'm going to line it right up there with the edge of my pocket fabric, and I'm going to clip it in place. Now I'm going to put in the 2 straps that go on the outer edges. I want to make sure I put those in 1/2 inch because we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance here when we sew this, and we don't want it to get caught in that seam. So I want to place these 1/2 inch in from that edge. I'll use my handy dandy ruler to determine where that is. And I'm going to clip those in place. Once again with the raw edge up here at the edge of my pocket fabric. I'm going to repeat that process for the other side. Then I'm going to place in the last 2 straps and get those evenly spaced. You can eyeball that if you want. I can tell you that these smaller straps are about 1 7/8 apart. So there's 1 7/8 inch between these two, all the way over. If you're using the larger straps, those are about 1.5 inches apart as you're spacing them out. If you have the opportunity, if you have access to the bed that you are going to be putting this on, I recommend you take this where that bed is and make sure that these straps are going to fit on your railings or wherever it is. Make sure that there's not any pieces that are going to get in the way of your straps as you're doing it. If you're not able to, then you just can't and you wing it. but if you are, it's a good idea to check before you begin sewing. So now I'm going to take the bottom edge of my pocket fabric. It's kind of long, so you have to maneuver it. And we want to line that up here with the bottom of my straps, the unfinished edge of my straps, and the other edge of the pocket fabric. So I'm going to get that lined up, and then I'm just going to shift my pins so that my pins are holding all three layers, the strap, the bottom of this pocket fabric, and the top of the pocket fabric, so that they're all clipped together. You're going to want to clip the rest of your edges together. This is the edge over here with my straps. And now we are going to sew around all three of the open sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you're going to want to mark a section over here. I'm going to start at this side. I'm going to sew up and around. This will be over my straps, down this side, and I've marked off a 6-inch section here that I'm going to leave unsewn. So this is my fold over here where I have folded my fabric up to meet the top, and I'm just going to sew around the three edges with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, just like with the straps, you're going to want to cut off the excess fabric in the corners, being careful not to cut your stitch line. And now through that 6-inch hole you left, we're going to flip it all right side out. This is easier than doing the straps. You can use your turning tool again to poke out any corners. Once you get it all turned out, especially the little corners, I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and I'm going to press this so it's nice and flat. All my seams are flat. I'm going to work on getting this open edge ready to sew shut. So I just want to fold my fabric around my interfacing. Actually, that makes a nice natural fold. And I'm going to fold it so that my edges are all even with one another. I'm going to fold both sides of the fabric inward. And you want to get it so it looks like the rest of the fabric that you've already sewn. And just clip that in place so it's ready to sew. And I'm going to take it back to my sewing machine and sew around all four edges with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. That will close my opening, and it will also top stitch the pocket fabric. So you can see I have top stitched all the way around my fabric, even across here at the top. Now it's time to make the pockets themselves. So you're going to want to take the bottom edge, the one without any straps, and fold it up 7 inches. Next, you're going to want to decide where you're putting your pockets. Now, if there's a specific type of book, or if you need a spot for glasses or bookmarks or reading lights or anything specific, you can grab one of those and measure out your space. That's kind of what I did with mine. I used books and I positioned where I thought I would like to have the pockets go. I'm going to use my fabric, my chalk pencil, and mark the lines that I want. I've got my pocket folded on a line here on my cutting mat, and I'm going to measure mine in and draw a line from the top of the pocket to the bottom of the pocket, nice and straight, so that I know if I just follow that line, my line should be straight. Otherwise, no way, not a chance, not a prayer. So my first pocket, I'm going to put in from the left 2 3/4 inches. So I just line it up and I'm going to draw a line. That's my first pocket. The only other line I need is going to be 9 3/4 inches from the left. With my lines marked, I'm going to take this back to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew from this side down to here. I'm going to sew from the top of this line to the bottom of this line, same with this line, and then this edge over here. I am going to put my side stitches in the same seam that I did my top stitching for. And when I am at the top of the pockets, I'm going to go forward and back a couple times to reinforce that seam, because it's going to take a lot of abuse as the pocket is being used. The only thing left to do is add the snaps onto the straps. For each one of the snaps, you will need 2 caps, a male portion and a female portion. If you have any trouble at all with snaps, I will put a link up here in the corner for a more step-by-step tutorial for how to install plastic snaps. So before you go punching any holes in your straps, you want to mark specifically where you want your snap to be. So you could take your strap, if you fold it in half and line up your edges, you pinch it and get a crease. And now you've just found the center of your strap. I'm going to line the bottom of this strap up with where it meets the fabric. That's where I want my snap to be. So I'm going to hold it in place, and then I'm going to measure out where I want it. So there's my center line that I marked, and I'm going to go up 3/8 of an inch. And this ruler actually has 3/8 marked, that black line right there. So I'm just going to line the 3/8 up at the bottom. I'm in the center, and I'm going to mark that spot right there. That's where I want my hole to be. So now I want to hold both sides of the strap together. I want to punch them at the same time so I know that my snap's going to line up exactly where I want it to. And you put your awl in the center of the hole, and without stabbing yourself, punch it through the other side. So now you have a hole in the top of the strap and the bottom. So I like to put the male side of the snap on the top and the female side on the bottom, but that's just personal preference. It doesn't really matter which way you want to put them on. But because I'm going to do the male side, I'm going to put my cap in here on this side. And on the back side, I'm going to put the male portion of my snap. That means I need the opposite here, which is the female side of the die. So I'm going to put that into my snap press. Then I'm going to put my snap in here with the cap, the flat side, down at the bottom, and press down. Then I have one side of the snap in, and now I'm going to work on the female side, the bottom side. And because you're going to have it fold down like this and snap, you need to put the cap on the back side of this. And if you need to widen your hole a little with your awl, you just pop it back through. So I'm going to put the cap on the back side of the strap. Then I'm going to put the female side of the snap on top. And I have to get my snap press ready. So now I'm doing the female side of the snap, which means I need the male side, the male die. So I'm going to screw that into my snap press. And once again, I'm going to put the cap, the flat side, down into the bottom and press down with the top. Then you got to test it, make sure your snap works. Yep, looking awesome. Perfect. I can unsnap, snap with ease. And now I just need to finish the other straps. It's easiest to do all of one side of the snap and then do all of the other side of the snap together. So now your bedside pocket caddy is ready to be snapped on and filled with all the necessities. Happy crafting!